What's going on, guys? Beastlygamer here. Welcome to my channel. Today I want to talk to you guys about Nintendo, a company that's really seen industry highs and industry lows because as of late the company has really been failing when it comes to the home console space. I own a Wii U. Do I play it? Not so much. And there's a myriad reasons as to why I don't play it. I don't play it because of Nintendo's draconian YouTube rules. I don't play it because I don't like clunky controls. I don't like this giant controller, to be quite honest. And there's very little third-party support on the Wii U. So when I want to play games that are good across the board, I usually play it on my Xbox or my PlayStation 4. But that being said, as old as I am, I've kind of watched Nintendo grow and shrink when it comes to the love of the world. When I was a kid, Nintendo was really the shit. Everybody loved Nintendo, and it was a company that was kind of like they owned the world. Developers used to have to go through hell just to have their games on a Nintendo console. And back then, Nintendo, and until Sega came along, they kind of had their hand on the pulse of the world. There wasn't really any competition. They had a monopoly on the home console space for a pretty good period of time. And so when they were in that position, they treated developers really bad. And so a lot of these developers who, as time went on, they started to see other companies coming out, Sega, Sony, Microsoft, that had home consoles that they could develop games on, they kind of stayed salty. And I understand that. If a company treats you bad, makes you jump through hoop after hoop after hoop for you to put your game on their console and still treat you like crap, a lot of those developers probably will never come back to Nintendo because of the way Nintendo carried itself. Because when they thought that they were the king of the world, they actually acted that way and treated other developers and companies less than. And so that's really been a huge issue and problem for Nintendo for the past few years. If you guys remember, the GameCube had very little third-party support. The Wii had even less than that. And then when you look at the Wii U, it's kind of a joke. Third-party developers, unless they're a giant publisher, they really don't mess with Nintendo. And so everybody knows that with the NX, Nintendo's got to really change their policies. They got to come out and kind of reintroduce themselves to the world and make themselves feel like a friend and a neighbor when it comes to other developers, because some of these developers are getting as big as Sony and Nintendo and Microsoft. These developers are making awesome games, making a lot of money. But Nintendo is Nintendo, and we all know how Nintendo is. They kind of walk to the beat of their own drum. And for the most part, it hasn't worked for the last 4 generations. The GameCube sold less than its competition. The Wii sold phenomenally well, but we all see it today as a gimmick. I have a Wii, I don't touch it. It's really a gimmick. And I remember that feeling. It was something new. Everybody wanted to try it, so everybody had to buy it. The Wii U is a total failure. And for the most part, these consoles have really no third-party support. But when it comes to Nintendo dealing with other developers, it appears that they still have a very cold shoulder when it comes to dealing with these people. And so some developers out there, we already know, like Square has the NX development kit. They have an early kit so they can create games for the NX. But apparently Nintendo is not being so kind to other developers. While they would like other devs to make games for the NX, they are not giving any details about what the NX actually is. And this could really bode bad for Nintendo in the future and make it a really horrible release of the NX when it does release. And ultimately, it could affect the lifespan of the console. Nintendo has got to kind of get over themselves. It's like they believe that they are better than everybody. You got to come down to earth and look across the table and see developers and everybody else as an equal in order for the consumer to see you that way. But I'll drop a link to this whole article in the description. I'll just give you guys some of the details of what's going on with these developers. It's not even gotten a release date yet, but the game maker is already facing a backlash from some developers. They're fuming because Nintendo is asking them to pitch games for the console without knowing anything about it. Bosses won't let them see the machine, know whether it's got multiple screens, how much memory and computing power they've got to play with, etc. It's led to a couple of big name developers ranting about this online, and that's what sparked fear that there will be 0 third-party games on the console when it does launch in shops. If that happens, Nintendo would literally have only its own made titles like Mario and Zelda to push the device's credentials to consumers. Thomas Mahler, head of Moon Studios, which made the well-received platformer Ori and the Blind Forest on Xbox One, is one of the angry developers not given access to the NX. So he took to NeoGAF, where a lot of people go, and he wrote, quote, "This is actually the single most annoying thing for every dev out there. We talked to Nintendo and got absolutely nothing. I'll never understand that. You could at least give me the goddamn specs so we'd know what to build shit for," end quote. Martin Salin of Coldwood Interactive, the developer of the recent PS4 platform hit Unraveled, complained also. He said, quote, "I wish I knew more about it, but they're really secretive about it. I actually had a really fun discussion with a person from Nintendo a while back. He wanted me to pitch something for the NX and then he could tell me more about what it was. But basically it's kind of hard to pitch something when you don't even know what it is." So Nintendo is already starting on a really bad path when it comes to dealing with their developers. You can't treat your devs like your consumers. I understand you want to keep the NX a secret from us, but when it comes to creating the most engaging and awesome content for your console, you need to give every ounce of information to these developers so they can really utilize it to the highest degree. You don't want to basically have a developer guessing at what they're trying to make a game for. They could come in there with higher expectations and your console may not be able to run it. They could come in there with lower expectations and make a game that your console will be able to just run maybe on the handheld portion of it. They need to know everything about it, but this does not bode well for Nintendo. And like I said before, we all know how Nintendo is. In the back of your mind, you like to think that with everything that's happened bad over the last few years, that they're learning something. Everybody's been screaming at Nintendo for the last few years that they need to have better relationships with third parties and work hand in hand with developers to kind of bring them back over to their side and kind of woo them. And with this little bit of information coming out about the way they're treating developers and not even letting them know what they're developing for, it really doesn't bode well for the NX. I want Nintendo to be successful, but at the cost of what? You know, if you treat developers that way, I personally don't like that. You know, if you want someone to create a game for you and you're not telling them what they're making it for, what the specs are of your system, how much memory it has, what kind of processor it has, none of that information, basically you're just telling them to take a shot in the dark, and that's not cool with me. Hopefully in the future with Nintendo, we're able to play games on YouTube again, but until that day, I probably won't. You guys let me know what you think in the comment section below. If Nintendo isn't even telling their developers what they're making games for, do you think this will affect the NX in the long run? I personally think it will, and from the sounds of it, if developers are getting this pissed off that Nintendo won't share any details about the NX, they probably are just going to walk away and not create anything on it. And if all we have again is Mario, Zelda, Metroid, Donkey Kong on the Nintendo console, it's going to flop again. Nintendo's got to have the third parties on board with this NX, or Nintendo NX is going to be done. You guys let me know what you think in the comment section below. Be sure to give a thumbs up, show support for my channel, and definitely subscribe. I'm the Beastly Gamer, and I'll see you guys next time.